welcome back to yet another live broadcast on your favorite football updates channel. It's a pleasure to be back on this beautiful Tuesday morning, the 2nd of December, with 24 minutes past the hour of 9 a.m. here in Kampala, Uganda, where we do stream to you live from. It's a bright and sunny day, quite already hot, feeling hot already as early as 9 a.m., but that's been the trend of our weather for the last couple of weeks. With rains in between here and there every once in a while. So do please, join us for this beautiful morning discussion. I wish to send my sincere vote of thank you to all of you that were part of last night's broadcast, in which we discussed what is going on at Real Madrid, and of course, a lot among other things that we did involving ourselves in as far as that discussion was concerned. Thank you so much, Mwesqua Joshua. Thank you so much, Pedri. Thank you so much, what's his name? LFC. Thank you so much. I'm trying to remember the name. SD, and every single one of you that was part of that broadcast yesterday. So really, today morning, we do return to yet again continue with the conversation of football that never seems to end. And this time around, we will be assessing or looking at the fixtures that will be coming your way this midweek, in as far as the Premier League's match day 14 is concerned, as we sort of continue to draw closer or drive towards the halfway mark of the season. I've taken a significant notice with the majority of some of your big teams, teams like Arsenal, teams like Chelsea, teams like Liverpool, teams like Manchester City. They're going to have no less than 8 fixtures in the month of December. And about 6 of those are going to be from the Premier League. And then you're going to have at least another set of, at least you're going to have one in the UEFA Champions League and another in the EFL Cup, particularly, of course, with the exclusion of Liverpool. Of course, I think Liverpool will have about 7 games because they are not in the quarterfinals of the EFL Cup. Chelsea are still in it. They have a date with Cardiff City. Manchester City are still in it. I seem to have forgotten who their opponent is. Arsenal are still in it. Their opponent is going to be Crystal Palace. So it's sort of going to be a marathon of fixtures in as far as things go in the month of December. Do expect plenty to be coming your way in as far as your respective teams are concerned, and we'll be here to sort of digest it all for you, to review it, and basically that's what will be happening. But like I said, the Premier League action does enter match day 14 tonight with 3 games on card in as far as the fixtures are concerned, including a blockbuster fixture between Newcastle United and Tottenham Hotspur. That's at 11:15 p.m. While 45 minutes earlier on, Fulham will have entertained Manchester City at Craven Cottage, while at the Vitality Stadium, it will be Bournemouth up against Everton. So another whole piece of action for you not to miss out. But for some reason, I think we should begin with. Let's start with looking at some of the opponents or some of the games that your teams have to play in the month of December alone, and then you will get to see, perhaps appreciate why I do say that it's going to, action is going to come thick and fast, depending on which side of the aisle you do fall, depending on what team it is that you support. But let's try and see if we can get a hold of those fixtures that should be coming your way in some of your favorite big teams. And without wasting any further ado, we will start off with Chelsea. Chelsea do have a game against Leeds United. That's midweek, Wednesday the 3rd of December. On Saturday the 6th, they will have a date against Bournemouth. Then on Tuesday 9th December, they will be up in the UEFA Champions League up against Atlanta. They will return home on the 13th of December to play against Everton. And then on the 20th, Yes, to play Everton. Then on the 16th of the same month, they'll be up away to Cardiff City. That's in the EFL Cup. Then they will return home to play Newcastle, and then after playing Newcastle, they will be playing at home against Aston Villa. The Newcastle game will be away at St James's Park, where they lost by 2 goals to 0 last season. For those of you that care to remember that fixture, in which Nicholas Jackson suffered a red card, and then on the 30th of December, that's New Year's, sort of the day before New Year's Eve, they will be at home against FC Bournemouth once again. So you can see as many as 8 games in the next space of 4 weeks. So for those of you that are just joining us, I say good morning to you all. Welcome back to the Football Tribe UG channel. If you're new here, please consider subscribing to the channel. And if you're a usual suspect, please do the usuals. Please like the broadcast, but more importantly, subscribe to the channel. Do let me know where you're joining us from this beautiful morning. Like I said, I'm coming to you live from Kampala, Uganda, and I'll be reading each and every one of your comments. But more importantly, do let me know where you're joining us from. Murunji Shafiq says hi. Hi, Murunji Shafiq. Good morning. How are you doing? So that's the run of fixtures that Chelsea will have in as far as the month of December. 8 fixtures. Twice they will face Bournemouth. They have an away trip to Newcastle, like we've seen. They have a home fixture against Aston Villa. They have an away fixture against Atlanta. They have a home fixture against the likes of Everton. So please do not miss out on that. Then when you cross over to the other side of London and you look at their Premier League opponents from the weekend, that was Arsenal. Arsenal do have a similar number of fixtures to play within the month of December. And up next for them on Wednesday is Brentford. Then after that, they will play Aston Villa. Aston Villa will be away at Villa Park, while Brentford is going to be at home at the Emirates Stadium. After that, they will travel to Club Brugge and play in the UEFA Champions League. Then they will be at home against Wolverhampton Wanderers. Those games coming on the 3rd of December, 6th December, 10th December, and the 13th of December. Now you can see that after every game, they literally have a 2 days rest only until the next fixture. In majority of these cases. So after playing Wolverhampton Wanderers on the 13th of December, they will be playing away at the Hill Dixon Stadium against Everton. Then they will face off with Crystal Palace in the EFL Cup. That will be on the 23rd of December. And then they will return home to play Brighton and Hove Albion on the 27th of December. And then on the day before New Year's Eve, they will be at home against Aston Villa. So you can see in the same month, they do have to take on Aston Villa twice. Our fortnight Edith's clip says, hi, my sister is pregnant. Wow, congratulations. I'm going to be a dad. If your sister is pregnant, you're going to be a dad or you're going to be an uncle? Which is which? Anyways, so that's the run of fixtures you should expect from Chelsea and Arsenal in as far as the month of December is concerned. Like I said, as many as 8 games that will be coming your way in very, very quick succession in as far as the month itself is concerned. I'm trying to look up what Manchester City have on cards. Let me see if they were able to summarize that out for us, but it doesn't appear to be the case. So we'll have to perhaps look for it in a different format or direction. But equally, Manchester City are going to be really, really, really engaged in as far as the Premier League is concerned. But without trying to look out for their individual fixture, we can still enlist the games that they're going to be engaged in the month of December alone. Okay. Somebody says, Camilo Cardenas says, Cabeza de Limon. Oh, what language is that? What language is that? So Manchester City do have Fulham tonight. Then on the 6th of December, they will be up against Sunderland. They do have a game against Real Madrid. That's in the UEFA Champions League, I think, on the 10th of December, after which they will play Crystal Palace. After playing Crystal Palace, they will play West Ham United. They will play Nottingham Forest. That's only the Premier League. And then, excuse me, and then after that, in between which they have a game in the EFL Cup. They have a game in the EFL Cup. Excuse me. Okay. Yes. Yes. The Real Madrid game will be on the 10th of December. It will be a Wednesday. After which they will face off with Crystal Palace. Then they will play at home against Brentford on the 17th of December in the EFL Cup. After which, on the 20th, they'll be up against West Ham United at the Etihad Stadium. Then they play Nottingham Forest. Now, that means at least they have a week's rest in between there, contrary to some of their counterparts. And then instead of playing on the 30th of December, their next fixture will come on the 1st of January when they take on Sunderland, and then subsequently on the 4th of January when they take on Chelsea, and then Brighton, Man City. So you can see that between 7th and 17th, there's no Premier League game. That's when you should expect the FA Cup games or FA Cup game to be played. But then also during that course of period, that's when the semi-finals of the that's when the semi-finals of the EFL Cup will equally be coming. So it's going to be a really a pick and go for majority of the big teams with very little time to sort of rest and recover. And like I said, this is the time when squads are going to be stretched, when squads are going to be really tested, not just for their depth, but also for their quality to keep things going. The other day, for some of you that were part of our broadcast, we were speaking about Arsenal squad depth and how they're going to be really tested. We talked about the advantage that they would have had in the return of Martin Odegaard, Noni Madueke, Victor Gyökeres, and Gabriel Jesus, although Gabriel Jesus is yet to kick a ball for them officially, as they anticipate for the return of Kai Havertz. Meanwhile, yet pondering on how to deal with things in the absence of Gabriel Magalhaes and William Saliba, for whom they are not yet sure for how long they will be out in action for. There's an expectation that Leandro Trossard could be back for tomorrow's fixture against Brentford. We'll wait to see on that about that. Then subsequently, injury is an issue. So for as long as you can stay injury free, then you can get to leverage your squad for the absolute best. But for as long as you have injuries, then it puts a limitation. It puts a limitation to how far you can go, or how far you can do, or what you can do, or how flexible you can be within your own squad. Anyways, let's look at the Man City game. In the sense of what we do expect. This is a kind of fixture that Manchester City have dominated all throughout the way, beating up against Fulham, literally for fun, beating them home and away, scoring a good amount of goals. It's only last season at the Etihad Stadium that you do remember Fulham really made it uncomfortable for Manchester City, but that game still ended in a 3-2 victory against, in favor of Manchester City. We saw a similar scoreline over the weekend as they beat up against Leeds in their most recent game. Arguably, they are one of the most informed teams in as far as the Premier League is concerned for Manchester City, and expectedly so, because in the last 5, they've only lost to Aston Villa by 1-0. Really, they've won all the other 4, winning by 3-1 against Bournemouth, winning 3-0 against Liverpool, 2-1 against... They've lost 2 in their last 5. They've lost against Aston Villa and they lost against Newcastle. Apologies on that, on the mishap there. They did lose against Newcastle in their last league outing prior to beating up against Leeds United by 3-2. So, but nonetheless, it's not the worst of run of form for Manchester City, collecting 9 points out of a possible 15. In sharp contrast, on the other side, Fulham have had their struggles. They did lose to Newcastle by 2-1, beat up against Wolverhampton Wanderers by 3-0, lost to Everton by 2-0, beat up against Sunderland by 0-0, and then managed to beat up against Tottenham Hotspur by 2-1 last weekend in a little bit of a surprise result in that London derby against a poor Tottenham Hotspur side, especially in as far as their first half was concerned, because they conceded 2 quick goals in that game through Kevin Tete and Harry Wilson to take all 3 points, while Mohamed Kudus was the goal scorer for Fulham in that game. So that means that they've lost 2 in the last 5 and won 3. Yes. So their form is not different from what Manchester City have been able to post on board. That's 9 points from the last possible 15 in as far as the Premier League is concerned. But we know that there is a huge disparity between where the two sides stand in as far as the Premier League table is concerned, with us with Fulham standing 17th on the league log. Will release Manchester City as second with only 5 points adrift of the table leaders in Arsenal. For Fulham, they will be looking for that victory. If they can win, that will take them to possibly 20 points and move to as high as 10th on the Premier League log. Whereas Manchester City will be desperate to win the fixture to reduce that 5 point gap to a mere 2 points. And you know what that means. We've seen Manchester City close 9 point gaps, 8 point gaps, 7 point gaps, 5 point gaps. So why not? And I think Arsenal will be looking over their shoulders as Manchester City play today. Paulo Rocky 1-1 says via Corinthians, and he puts a flying bird. I think Paulo is from Brazil, or Brazil, as we prefer to pronounce it, on the side of the aisle. Good morning to you, Paulo. Is it a morning? Is it a good afternoon? Is it a good evening in your country? I do not know for sure. What part of Brazil do you come from? Is it Corinthians? Do you come from Rio de Janeiro? Do you come from Santos? Do you come from that small island called Paqueta? Where is it? Are you joining us from? So, in terms of going on paper, I do not think we can really make a case for Fulham in how they come up against Manchester City. When you look at both squads, we know that Manchester City are very much stronger. And like I've told you, in the last 5 meetings, Fulham have barely had even a draw. They've had a sniff. So I do not expect the result to be any different. I do expect it to be, though, a very difficult game for Manchester City. Sometimes they do make things difficult for themselves. Sometimes they play with a lot of simplicity and simplify things for themselves. Nonetheless, Fulham becomes one of those bogey sides who can beat up against the Giants on their given day. However, it's not happened in recent times against Manchester City, and I do not think today will be the opportunity when Manchester City know what's at stake in as far as the Premier League table is concerned, are looking over in frame to seeing an opportunity that Arsenal are only 5 points ahead of them. And if they do win this particular fixture, they get to reduce that point gap to a mere 2 points. Really, they wait for Arsenal to play on Wednesday against a very bogey side in Brentford. So we'll be waiting for that. Then also, they'll keep in mind that they will be waiting for Chelsea to play against Leeds. And from what I do gather, or what my expectation is that they will beat up against Leeds. And that's Chelsea. And Manchester City cannot afford to falter, because that means then if they draw or lose, that means if Chelsea go ahead and win their game on Wednesday, they get to leapfrog them and move back to second place. And if Arsenal were to win, then they go back to expanding that gap, on their points lead against Manchester City. So for a team like Man City, who are well within the title race, I think the game does not get more significant than that in regards to what the implications are on the Premier League table. In terms of how they could set up, really, Manchester City is one of those teams that you will struggle to predict their kind of lineup. Of course, there are mainstays within that team that you can look up on, like Gianluigi Donnarumma, maybe Ruben Diaz, Joško Gvardiol. But when it comes to, left back, right back, it can be Kushanov, it can be Matthias Nunes. With left back, it could be Ryan Attenori, it could be Nico O'Reilly. Depending on how they choose to go about their business, it could be Joško Gvardiol with John Stones coming into the centre-back role. In that midfield, it could be Tidjane Reinders alongside Nico Gonzalez with Bernardo Silva. And then up front, you expect Jeremy Doku, Phil Foden, and Brad Erling Haaland. But those are mere expectations. The game does come still a little too early for Rodri and Mateo Kovacic, but Rodri has recovered. And he's we do not know when he will be included in the matchday squad, or he could be included in today's matchday squad. But Manchester City are trying to take their time with his recovery to avoid any further setbacks, as they have suffered in the recent couple of months at the start of the season. So they will be looking to avoid or to cut out those issues by sort of delaying his surfacing on the team. On the other side, Fulham do have their injuries. Harry Wilson suffered a knock in that Tottenham Hotspur game. He could miss this one. Rodrigo Muniz remains out through a hamstring injury, as well as Andy Robertson with a knee injury. Fulham is one of those teams with a very, very narrow squad. John Ritchie Logan says hi. Hi, John Ritchie Logan. Good to have you on the broadcast. Do let me know where you're joining us from this beautiful morning. So, for the side of Fulham, do expect the likes of Bernard Leno, Kevin, Tete, sorry, Kenny Tete, not Kevin, Kenny Tete, Joachim Anderson, the captain, Calvin Bassey in that, defense, Rances Senior, expect to see the likes of Sander Berge, Sasa Lukic, Joshua King, Alex Iwobi, Samuel Chukwueze, sort of had a fairly good game against Tottenham Hotspur, and Raul Jimenez who to lead the lines there, and the likes of Emily Smith-Rowe to be among the players that could come off the bench to see if they can harm this Manchester City side. Given how things went against Leeds United, you would try and make a case for Fulham, but like I've shown you, recent history has not showed that Fulham do have in it to even get a result against Manchester City. Like I've said, they've lost 5 out of 5 in the last 5 meetings, losing by 2-0 last season at Craven Cottage. Really, they lost 3-2 in the earlier fixture at the Etihad Stadium. When you go back to the 2023-2024 campaign, you'll find a 4-0 victory for Manchester City at Craven Cottage, and the reverse fixture ending in a 5-1 defeat for Fulham, and then another trip to Craven Cottage ended in a 2-1 victory for Manchester City. So regardless whether it's at Craven Cottage or at the Etihad Stadium, Manchester City just know how to come out on top in that fixture. Then quickly, the game against Bournemouth does get underway as well at the same kickoff time, like I said, 10:30 p.m. East African time, between Bournemouth and Everton. Now, both sides did lose over the weekend, with Everton losing terribly against Newcastle in a 4-1 thumping, whilst Bournemouth conceded a 2-0 lead to lose 3-2 against Sunderland. Excuse me. So do expect all that to be happening in as far as today's fixture is concerned. Okay, so Bournemouth have really struggled for form in the recent games. I think they've only won 1 game in the last 5, and that was the victory against Nottingham Forest. I think must have been Sean Dyche's second game in charge of Nottingham Forest in as far as the Premier League is concerned. The earlier one having been a 2-2 draw against Man United. So hi Pedri, good morning. How are you doing, my brother? So ever since they beat up against Nottingham Forest by 2-0, and that was on March the 9th, they've not won a Premier League game. In fact, they've lost 3 and only drawn 1. They did lose to Man City in a 3-1 beating. They lost to Aston Villa, who beat them by 4-0. They drew against West Ham by 2-2, and they needed to come from 2 goals down to find inspiration to win that one. And then, also the last weekend, like I said, they did lose by 3 goals to. They did lose by 3-2 against Sunderland. Pedro is saying, what do you think of Barcelona Atletico Madrid? We're going to get to that game. It's going to be, I expect it to be a very, very big game, blockbuster game. If Atletico Madrid bring their A game, Barcelona could be in for a run for their money. But let's discuss that in a bit as we look to wrap up these 3 games in the Premier League. So when you look at the last 5 meetings between Everton and Bournemouth, you'll see that Everton have only won 2 fixtures. Realist Bournemouth have won the other 3. Rarely do you find a draw in this game. In fact, out of the 16 Premier League meetings that there has been between the 2 sides, there's been only 2 draws, with Bournemouth taking the lion's share of victories with a tally of 8, compared to Everton is only 6. Last season, Bournemouth beat up against Everton home and away in a 1-0 victory at the Vitality Stadium and a 3-2 victory at Goodison Park. So when you rewind things further back to last season, but one, you'll find a 2-1 victory for Bournemouth at home and a 3-0 defeat to Everton. That was a 3-0 defeat to to Everton at the Goodson Park. Now, does this spell out doom for for Everton? For a team that has equally struggled for form in their last five, losing two against Newcastle 4-1 and against Tottenham Hotspur by 3-0, really drawing 1-1 against Sunderland and beating up against Fulham by 2-0, and Manchester United, you struggle to figure out what kind of Everton you should expect for today's game. Is it the 10-man team that beat up against Man United, or the team that was shambolic over the weekend as they lost to Newcastle by 4-1? So it becomes a bit of a difficult one. Like I said, Bournemouth are not equally in their form. If you had the opportunity to beat them again, I do not think the chance comes any bigger than this for Everton. And they should be looking to take chance or to leverage on Bournemouth's recent poor form to get all 3 points. That's what you should be expecting. But in the Premier League, as we all know, the game is not over until it is over. Anything can happen. Your expectations can be upset. If you do expect Bournemouth to have the home advantage, that can be upset. They do have some really, really good players in the likes of Justin Kluivert. When you look at the goalkeeper, George Petrovic, when you look at the Marcus Tavernier, Tyler Adams, Alex Scott, Marco Senesi, Diakite in that back row, Adrian Trafford, Evan Nilsson, who's really, really struggled to, score goals for Bournemouth this season. So, and then on the side of Everton, again, the fixture, they will be, I think, without, what's his name? Idris Gana Gueye. I think he remains out through suspension following what was deemed to be violent conduct between him and Michael Keane. Yes, but they will be without Nathan Patterson, Marin Rohi, Seamus Coleman, who suffered a hamstring, Gerard Braithwaite, who is out through a hamstring, there for the side of Everton. Of course, for Bournemouth, Lewis Cook suffered a red card in their defeat to Sunderland, so you will miss this fixture. Then Owen Bavin, Ryan Christie, David Brooks will be out through suspension, as well as Marco Senesi. These two will be out because they will be serving bans. They will be serving suspensions for accumulating 5 yellow cards. So that means then we could see Milosa Vijevic in that centre back role for Bournemouth alongside Bafode Diakite. Nathan Ramos says Santos FC. He goes on to say Pele, Neymar. Are those your best players? I wouldn't compare Pele to Neymar, but they're two, Brazilian heroes and very, very great players. But Pele, arguably one of the greatest there has been in the sport. In case that's your point of reference. But it's good to have you on the broadcast. Kindly consider liking the broadcast, but also subscribing to the channel if you're new here. Thank you so much. So, really, I think I had forgotten to give my predictions. But Everton, Bournemouth, I'm going to go for Bournemouth to win 2-1. Manchester City, Fulham, I'm going to go for Manchester City to win 2-1. Then the big elephant in the room as well on Tuesday night will be Newcastle against Tottenham Hotspur. Tottenham Hotspur, their away form is much better than their home form. So if there's any time you would expect for Tottenham to bounce back, perhaps this could be the opportunity. Nonetheless, Thomas Frank continues to come under criticism from the fans who he criticized for booing Guillermo Vicario for his error in the game in the defeat to Fulham. A lot of things have been questioned about Thomas Frank, who he's known to be a pragmatic manager and things like that, but things have not worked out to his advantage in recent times. It's oftentimes a very high scoring fixture when it comes to Newcastle versus Everton. Newcastle versus Tottenham Hotspur. Albeit the two sides have already met this season. That was in the 4th round of the EFL Cup, where Newcastle beat up against Tottenham Hotspur by 2-0. Last season, both sides cancelled each other out. last season, Newcastle beat up against Tottenham by 2-1 in the respective fixtures. That was home and away. And then when you go back to the earlier season or the season before that, 2023-2024, you find a 4-0 victory for Newcastle at home against Tottenham Hotspur, while the reverse fixture ended in a 4-1 victory for Tottenham. So that means usually the home side gets the advantage. Then when you go back to April 2023, you find a 6-1 thumping for Newcastle. Thumping Tottenham Hotspur. So I do not know. I have no spirit whatsoever that this is the game in which Tottenham Hotspur are going to bounce back. In any case, Tottenham are winless. Sorry, have won only one in their last 5 Premier League games, and that was the 3-0 victory against Everton. Ever since then, they've lost to Chelsea, they've lost to Arsenal, they've lost to Fulham in their most recent fixture, really drawing against Man United in between. So that's how poor their form is been. On the other side, Newcastle are looking to build some momentum following 2 consecutive victories after the 3-1 defeat to Brentford. Sorry, after 2 consecutive defeats, 3-1 against West Ham and 3-1 against Brentford, they've managed to recover back and beat up against Man City by 2-1 and Everton by 4-1. And so that means they've won 3 out of the last 5, with the other having been a 2-1 victory against Fulham on Match Day 9. Now, I do want to believe that the kind of inspiration they picked in beating up Everton should be enough to carry them through today's fixture and get the better of this Tottenham Hotspur side that are really, really poor. They've not looked good. In fact, they've lost 3 across all competitions. They lost 5-3 in the UEFA Champions League, lost 4-1 to Arsenal, lost to Fulham. So they will be looking to bounce back. But is the Newcastle game the game you get to bounce back? In terms of their league positions, they're too close to each other with Tottenham Hotspur in 12th place and Newcastle 13th, all with a tally of 18 points. It's the goal difference that separates the two. I do not know. I do not foresee a draw in this one. Looking at how complacent Tottenham Hotspurs have been. Of course, Newcastle themselves have struggled for a bit of consistency this season, but I do believe if there's an opportunity that does present itself for Newcastle to build that momentum, Tottenham Hotspur is that game. They've had some really, really poor performances this season. Take nothing away from Arsenal in the London Derby that they won 4-1, but even against Man United, they were poor. Even against Fulham in the first half particularly, they were really, really poor, So when you go against Chelsea, the game they lost by 1-0, they're really, really poor in that game as well, So things have, on overall basis, have not really, really gone their way. They've been that poor. So Thomas Frank is going to be under a lot of pressure to try and win, some points and try and win a game of football. Although I do not think that he will be able to outwit Ed Howe. And I'm not saying it's impossible because in the Premier League, anything can happen. But let's see. How could Newcastle set up? Aaron Ramsdale in goal ahead of Nick Pope, who I think has been out through injury. Tino Livramento at right back, Malik Theo, the Senegalese international, alongside Dan Burn, with Lewis Hall at left back, Luis Miley and Bruno Guimaraes alongside Joelinton. Because Yohan Wissa is out, Nick Pope is out with a groin injury, Kieran Trippier with a hamstring injury, Willian Osula suffers an ankle injury, Harrison Ashby with a thigh injury, Steven Botman has a back issue, whereas Emily Kraft has a knee issue. So I'm not seeing Sandro Tonali here, but he could start in that midfield ahead of Lewis Miley, then Jacob Murphy, Nick Voltmada, and Harvey Barnes, or Anthony Gordon could start ahead of Jacob Murphy, or Anthony Elanga. It could be Anthony Elanga, it could be Anthony Gordon, whoever, but you do expect Nick Voltmada to be a mainstay in there. Then on the side of Tottenham Hotspur, Randall Colomwani was one of the players that did look sharp against Fulham, even though he was unable to score, to be available to lead the lines. Guillermo Vicario in goal, Mickey van de Ven, Kevin Danso alongside Pedro Porro, especially in the absence of, Christian Romero is did miss the previous game against Fulham. I don't know for what reason, but James Maddison, Dominic Solanke, Radu Dragson, Dejan Kulusevski, Yohan Wissa, and Kota Takai, the fixture does come a little too early for them as they remain sidelined through injury. So Joao Paulinho and Archie Gray in that midfield, it's not the midfielder I'd want to see. I'd rather Joao Paulinho start alongside Rodrigo Bentancur or alongside alongside Pape Matsar, and then Lucas Bagville, Rickarson, Mohamed Kudus, and Rando Colomwani. And even instead of Rickarson, I'd rather Brandon Johnson will start. But that's for Thomas Frank to decide on what team starts for his side. But if they are complacent, they won't avoid another 2-0 defeat as they did suffer in the fourth round of the EFL Cup. So that's my submission on those 3 Premier League games that will be coming your way. At night, we'll get to discuss more of it. Sorry, not more of those fixtures, but what's to come the subsequent day at 11 p.m. And quickly, let's go to the game between Atletico de Madrid and Barcelona in as far as the Spanish La Liga is concerned. It's the first versus fourth, and this is an enormous opportunity for Atletico de Madrid to close on the gap between them and Barcelona, because Barcelona have 34 points, whereas Atletico de Madrid, who are fourth, have 31 points. Real Madrid coming second and Villarreal third, respectively, with 33 and 32 points apiece for them. So you can see that only 3 points separate the fourth team and the first team, whereas there's a huge disparity of points, as many as 7 points between the fourth place team and the 15th place, which is Real Betis, who come at 24 points. So it's a huge opportunity for Diego Simeone to close the gap. At the start of the season, my prediction was that Barcelona would retain the La Liga title, that Atletico de Madrid would finish second, and Real Madrid would come third. Now, unfortunately, they did not have the greatest starts to the campaign. Atletico de Madrid, they were drawing so many games, but they've tried to recover in recent times and had very, very good performances, really. In terms of players for Barcelona, who do we expect to be available? Ronald Araujo won't be available. Apparently, he's been given time off to get himself straight mentally and psychologically. So his mental health is being sort of prioritized in this particular case. Fermin Lopez has a calf issue. Gavi still out with a knee injury, while Marc-Andre ter Stegen, that one has a back issue. On the side of Atletico de Madrid, they don't have so many injuries to worry about, beside Marcos Llorente with a thigh injury and Robin Lee Nomad, who has a knee injury. So on the side of Barcelona, expect Joan Garcia, Eric Garcia in goal, Eric Garcia and Pau Kubasi, Jules Kounde and Alejandro Balde are there at left back. Pedri, Frenkie de Jong, Dani Olmo, Lamine Yamal, Ferran Torres, and Rafinha. That means the likes of Marcus Rashford, Robert Lewandowski could be some of those that do make the bench. It's going to be a very strong Barcelona team, depending on how Hansi Flick may decide to, field his side. And then on the side of Atletico de Madrid, Jan Oblak, the captain, a mainstay, David Henko, Jose Mario Gimenez. This one scored the winning goal against Inter Milan in the UEFA Champions League last week. Then Nael Moina, Mateo Ruggeri, Koke, Pau Boris. Although, what's his name? There's a player, a midfielder, Johnny Cardoso. They signed from Real Betis. Could be him. Nico Gonzalez, Alex Baina, Giuliano Simeone, and Julian Alvarez. But do not forget they have an Alexander Soloth who scored a brace for them over the weekend. So really, it's the kind of game where anything can happen. Anything can happen. I'm trying to see if I can get the feed for for their game over the weekend, in which they beat up against Real Oviedo by 2-0, with Alexander Soroth scoring that brace. You also have Anton Griezmann to call up on should things fail, but they'll need to really work extremely, extremely hard if they are to get a point against Barcelona. And I think it is a gettable point if Atletico Madrid are serious, because they do have the squad that is capable of doing it. However, I would still give the advantage to Barcelona. Barcelona is one of those sides that has always troubled Atletico de Madrid. Even when you look at their recent head-to-head, apologies on that. Like I told you, I do struggle with the cold. For example, in the semi-finals of the Copa del Rey last season, Barcelona beat up against Atletico by a 1-0. Then last season in the Spanish La Liga, Atletico de Madrid lost to Barcelona 4-2. Then in the Copa del Rey semi-finals, in one of those games, the first leg ended in a 4-4 draw. Very, very high scoring fixture. Then when you go back to the Spanish La Liga, in the first leg of last season, Atletico de Madrid beat up against Barcelona by 2-1. When you wind things further back to the previous campaign, you'll find a 3-0 victory for Barcelona at the Wanda Metropolitano and a 1-0 victory in the other fixture. So Barcelona, for between 2023, 2024, 2022, 2023, and they won that fixture home and away. You have to go back to again 2021, 2022, when Barcelona beat Atletico 4-2, whereas Atletico also won one of those fixtures by 2-0. So it's a bit of a contentious one. I expect Atletico de Madrid to score in this game. Barcelona at Camp Nou, they could edge it by 2-1. That's the prediction I'm going to go with. So for me, that's my expectation. Anyways, guys, like I told you, I do struggle with the cold. So whereas I would have loved to extend this much further so that we get to continue with the discussion and talk about the twins that Arsenal, the Ecuadorian twins that Arsenal have signed, one a central midfielder and the other a winger. Unfortunately, I can't stay further than this, but it's been a pleasure doing this for you and with you this morning. Thank you so much, Murunji Shafiq. Thank you so much, Fortnite Edits. Thank you so much, Pedri. Thank you so much, Paulo. Thank you so much, Nathan, Ramos, and every single one of you that has been part of today morning's podcast. Let's link up again tonight at around 11 p.m. East African time. Otherwise, it's always a pleasure doing this with you. For our new subscribers, we say welcome to the Football Tribe UG channel. We hope you do enjoy your stay with us. For our usual suspects, maximum respect to you. For our semi-regular suspects, thank you for always sparing the time. For the non-regulars, we still do not take your love and support for granted. Those of you that watch our live broadcasts long after they've ended, we do not take you for granted. Thank you so much. Have yourselves a blessed day, and I'll see you guys next time. That's tonight at 11 p.m. provided all factors remain constant. Stay blessed. Bye-bye for now. It's been a pleasure.